Welcome to the SwimStrong Dryland Podcast. We are dedicated to inspiring and educating the swimming world. Our podcast highlights the work, character, and achievements in and around the SwimStrong community. Welcome, everybody. We have Coach Joe Natina from the Crow Canyon Sharks here joining us today. Coach Joe, would you mind giving a quick intro of yourself and where you're from?
My name's Joe. I coach at Crow Canyon Sharks. I grew up in Redding, California. I've lived in California my whole life. And I've been at Crow Canyon for 8 years, a little over, going on 9. I'm in my 9th year.
Well, we appreciate you joining us today. And Coach Joe has, for the last 8 years of coaching, had someone in the top 100 in the world on his team. Phenomenal track record with Crow Canyon as a coach. And so we're excited to really hear your secret sauce, the things you've done in your career, what's led you to being successful. And we have the privilege of getting to work with you in the SwimStrong family. And so we're super grateful to brush shoulders with you on a day-to-day basis and for everything you do. So, but before we get into the meat of everything, we got to do some rapid fire questions. So you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. First up, what would be your walkout song?
Holy Diver, Dio.
Favorite movie?
Gotta be The Big Lebowski.
Okay. I thought you were going to say Step Brothers.
Close second.
Close second. What would you do if you weren't a coach? What would you be doing in your career if you weren't a coach?
So since I was a little kid, I just like being outside. So I always wanted to be a wildlife photographer, but swimming pulled me in. So
That's awesome.
Probably that.
How about your dream vacation? Money's not a thing.
Ooh, Alaskan wilderness for like a month.
Sick. Best restaurant at any travel swim meet you've ever been to?
Terry Black's, Austin, Texas.
Shout out Texas. And what's something that most people don't know about you?
I don't know about most people, but yeah, I guess most people don't know. But I have a really big family. I got 8 siblings. They're all sisters. I've got my mom's side of the family is huge. It's like they had my mom's parents had 11 kids and then adopted 2, and then all those kids had anywhere from 4 to 11 kids. So I've got over 100 first cousins, and they all live in a small area in Northern California. So it's interesting growing up. Well, I don't know any other way, but
that's awesome.
I hung out with my cousins a lot. So
that's really cool. You can start a whole swim team with your family.
I think we tried. They're not all swimmers. They're not all swimmers.
So thanks for answering all those so people can get to know you a little bit more on a personal level as we jump in here. So Joe's an awesome guy. And I'm excited to get into kind of the professional side of things for you just in your coaching career. And I'm curious, first off, just you are going to be, you're not only a USA National Junior Team coach, but you've been selected to coach at World Juniors this year in Israel. And first question I have for you is just what does it take to earn a spot on the team to be able to go to Worlds or coach at a USA National Junior camp?
On staff or as an athlete?
To be on staff as a coach.
I think, well, it's a selection thing. So there's no one way to go about it, I don't think. I think you have to have somebody on the team, I think is one of the requisites. But I also think there's kind of a progression to it. Like they want the head coaches, Jenny and Ken are great, and they've done these things before, so I think they start there, they start with the head coaches, and Eric Poske, like I should shout him out. He's been phenomenal, like such a good resource. And he's like super knowledgeable about the sport, like unbelievably knowledgeable about the sport. And for those of you who don't know, he's the junior team director. He makes the calls, but I think, it's probably a collaborative effort, I would imagine. First to select the head coaches, and then Eric and the head coaches selecting the staff. I just think you have to be somebody that works well with others, because when you're coaching a team like that, like I was up at the junior team camp, Abby, Lou, and Jason Walter were the head coaches up there, and we've got 40 some athletes that all are used to different things, and we all do different things in our programs. So communicating, collaborating, figuring out what the athletes need. Obviously, at a camp, it's in April. It's not as critical as what we're leading into right now. So,
Sure.
yeah, I think it's just like you gotta have athletes that are making teams, and you gotta have athletes that are making teams consistently. And it kind of it shows USA Swimming that you know what you're doing, and then having good relationships with other coaches across the country is important.
Yeah.
I think so that people know that you can work well with others.
Yeah. It makes
And
sense.
somehow, some way, I did that. I don't know how.
Well,
But yeah, it's definitely an honor. Like it's not something to be overlooked. I'm super excited about it. To be really cool.
Well, congratulations first on being selected and for that opportunity, because it's well deserved. And Joe's a super humble guy, so I'll shout it out, when he won't. But absolutely awesome. But what was it about the experience with, whether it's the national junior team camp, that led you to accept a position as a junior worlds coach? Like, what are you most looking forward to about that experience? What do you personally get out of it?
Well, honestly, I like when Eric called me for the junior team camp, and like it's a really busy time of year for our team back home. And I was like, "Hey, man, can I get back to you like next week? I need to talk to my staff and see if I can get it covered because we had a bunch of meets going on at the same time too." And he's like, "You can get back to me tomorrow." I was like, "Oh, is this like something that people don't turn down?" And he's like, "Yeah." So I was like, "Okay, I'll do it. I'll figure it out." So, but yeah, like really the experience at the junior team was just about the athletes, man. Like, I knew most of the coaches already, and it was fun and educational hanging out with them for sure. But just getting to know the athletes and like how dedicated all of them are, and it's really good for those athletes to get together too, because they're the elite of the elite, and most of them, they got one, maybe two, the really, really, really successful teams, three athletes from their home clubs coming out there. So it's good for them to talk to those other athletes and kind of relate to how it is being back home where you're the top dog, and it always seems like you're way out ahead, but it's good for them every once in a while to come get in the pool with other athletes that are on the same level to remind them that they got to keep working. So
Yeah.
it was fun watching all that. It was fun getting to know the athletes, and then seeing them swim at nationals, like watching Thomas Heelman and Henry McFadden make that team was like so much fun. And I'm not much of like a swim fan, I wouldn't say, but I'm a people fan. I'm a competition fan, so that made nationals even more fun, watching all those athletes that I got to meet and get to know, kick butt at that meet. So
That's
looking
awesome.
forward to it again.
That's cool. That's cool to hear. I feel like being able to be with athletes from all over is such a rewarding experience, and being involved in people's lives, even just for us too, like when we travel around or host different camps or go to swim meets, being with the athletes and experiencing the joy of
Yeah,
seeing them be
I actually
successful.
thought of you when I was at nationals, because I'm like, oh, this is what it's like when Eric comes out to meets. Like the kids from all over
That's
swimming, and like every heat there's somebody so
It's
it's
so
cool.
much fun. So that's awesome to hear, and one of the reasons why I'm sure they selected you out there too, just because that's your focus is on the athletes, and I'm sure that's been a huge secret to your success, is that it's not about you, it's about the kids, it's about what you can give them so that they can reach their dreams and be the best they can be and have an impact on them. And I'll let you speak to it, but I'm wondering. So I don't want to just gloss over this, but having, in 8 years of coaching at Crow, having somebody in the top 100 in the world every year is pretty crazy. And then being selected for these different national opportunities, international opportunities, it speaks volumes about what you've done, but like you didn't just get there overnight, right? And so I'm wondering if you could give some insight into like, hey, if you're a young coach starting a team, or even just a coach who's been in it for a while but hasn't seen that type of progress or success yet, what would be like your advice for someone who wants to have the distinguished things that you've accomplished, and they want to do the same thing?
I mean, I believe in, really, I think we took like the next step after having, I forget the company that he runs, but this guy named David Bensel out, who is like for a team building exercise, but he spoke to something that really resonated with me, which is like being a values driven program, not a results driven program. Like the results are fun, the results are really fun, but like it's the important thing is the values that we care about, and I think you have to decide what those are. That's like your baseline. What's important, and those things should take no talent whatsoever, and those things should be contributable. I don't know if that's the right word, but everyone should be able to contribute to those things, regardless of their level of ability. If you can create that kind of environment, people will thrive because they'll feel valued regardless of their achievement level. And that's what we try to do. We're imperfect, but that's what we try to do. Like I'm definitely, I definitely have to steer myself back onto that course every once in a while when I'm like, oh man, we should be swimming faster. And then I can relate it back to our values and get back on track. And since we've done that, that's when we've really taken off as a team. Like we always had good athletes. We've been blessed with really talented athletes and really hardworking athletes. But our team culture now is better than it's ever been. I think that's the baseline. And then like for me, I just think swimming efficiency is always been really important to me. The technique side of things, and like giving kids simple instruction on how to do that, and how to measure that so that they can take responsibility for it. Like we count strokes on every lap. We check times on every lap, regardless of like our speed that we're trying to achieve. Like we want to know what those are. I think that my number one advice would be like, figure out what is important to you. Get 3 things that everyone can relate to. That's not talent driven, that everyone can do. Whether that's, ours are teamwork, toughness, and trust. It probably could be teamwork, toughness, and honesty, but I wanted another T, so because I like alliterations. But like for us, it's like teamwork. Like that's an obvious one. Like you put the needs of the team above the needs of the individual. And toughness isn't about doing 10,000 yards a day. Even though if you're a distance swimmer, every once in a while, I think you need to do that. It's about doing the right thing, even when it's the hard thing, and being a good teammate they're kind of intertwined, because like sometimes you need to tell your teammate something that's hard to tell them, that's hard to hear. And the honesty and trust part is like, you want to be someone that people can trust. And that comes through honesty, and your teammates need to trust that when you are, telling them they need to do something better, that it's coming from a good place, that it's coming from a place that they want you to succeed, like that you have interest in their success. So that's been ours. It's really like, it's corny, it's definitely corny, but I believe in it, like, cause I've seen it, and I've seen it work over time. And that culture build over time, because like each successive wave of, let's say, like graduating seniors, right? Like, hey, the freshmen that we have this year on our team have really good examples to look up to, you know, and the freshmen that we have on our team next year are going to have even better examples to look up to, because, you know, those kids have continued to have better and better examples to look up to. I don't want to say better, but just kids that have figured more things out. You know, like you learn through osmosis through your teammates, right? Of, you know, the way to go about things, the way to carry yourself, the way to focus, put your efforts in the right spot, not take yourself too seriously, and then those individual athletes probably figure some new things out on their own, you know, and so it's just like more knowledge of the right way to go about things, I think is what it is. And then each successive wave of kids just has a little bit more that they get through osmosis, and they figure out things on their own. So, but I would say like your culture and your values are the number one things. And then as far as training goes, like there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. And like the more that I learn about the sport, the less I feel I know. And the hungrier I get for knowledge. So I'd say like stay hungry for knowledge, but don't change too much at one time. Like, you know, 10% rule is pretty good, whether you're progressing through a season, like how much yardage to add, how much intensity to add. It's also a good rule for if you're making a change. I think the first person I heard say that was Ray Lewis. And I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. Because it's like if you completely change your program around all at once, you don't know what it was that caused the success or the failure that you have, right? You want to do it in increments. So it's like, oh, the only thing we changed this season was on Tuesdays we did more, you know, anaerobic kicking, and we went really fast. So let's do a little bit more of that. And I just think I also think that like kids, or especially kids that are like still in high school, athletes that are still in high school, like I think they need aerobic conditioning, and I think they need to do it in a specific way. At least that's what we do. It's what we've had success with, so that they have the opportunity to swim multiple distances well, right? Like you can just hammer out a bunch of laps and be good at the mile, but probably only the mile. If you want to be able to have speed and endurance, I think you need to have a stroke count, a kick count, and a time you're supposed to hold when you're doing, you know, repeats of aerobic conditioning. And I think if you keep your stroke count down, you give yourself the opportunity to have speed. So, like the way I operate, at least, is going on the assumption that most kids are going to be middle distance swimmers. And until they show promise in just sprinting, we focus on that. And like, yeah, hopefully by the time they're 16, 17, 18, we kind of know what their specialties are. And then we start to focus on those. But in our program, we really try not to do so. Like everybody's an IMer and everybody's a middle distance swimmer until they're 15, 16, and you really start to know what their genetic potential is. You know, most humans fall under the middle distance category. There's like a little bit on the sprint end of the spectrum, a little bit on the distance end of the spectrum. Most people fall in the middle. So like my thing is like, hey, we want to be the best we can be, right? Whatever that ends up being. So we train them to be able to, you know, put themselves in a position to have success, even if they end up being a distance swimmer only, or if they end up being a sprinter only. Like if you train that middle ground, I think that they can have success when we figure out what their specialty actually is.
Yeah. No, I feel like that's really great advice. You gave a lot of good things for like a starting point. Number one, I heard you say team culture is first and foremost. And I think that's phenomenal. Like if you have that focus, you're going to see results happen. I love what you said about how the results are fun, but they're not the focus. really a character-driven program, a people-focused program, and the results happen as a byproduct. And then hearing you say, and I think this takes humility, and maybe you can speak a little bit to this. I think this is something unique about you. I think there's a good amount of people who have done this, but there's a lot who haven't been open to continued education. And so you said something that I think a lot of people are missing, if I'm being honest, is that people have their way of doing something, and then hearing new things is either can be offensive to them or too challenging or too much to comprehend. And you said to build as many relationships as you can. And so you have a lot of friends across the coaching community, and I've seen that, and you give a lot to people, and then and they give a lot as well. And you're crediting all these people with a lot. And I just think that goes to show your humility, and not only being open to like, hey, you said the more I educate myself, the more I realize I don't know. I feel the same way in our sphere, and always wanting to learn and having that hunger, I think, is so important and what makes you great. So what specific things do you do to continue to learn, as a coach, and how did you develop the mindset to be like that? Because I feel like ego gets in the way of a lot of people from being as successful as they could be, and you don't have that.
Like specifically, I just, I want to do the best job I possibly can. Like I just want to do the best I possibly can. I'm spending a lot of time doing this. Just like, I tell the athletes, like, why wouldn't you want to be the best you can be? You're dedicating your life to this thing, So, dude, I have an ego for sure. No doubt. I definitely do. But I don't know. I guess that just gets pushed aside when I'm thinking like, how do I do better? I don't know. But specifically, like, it's just talking to other coaches around the country, seeing what they're doing, how we can implement something I think might work incrementally. And like, that's been the biggest resource for me. Like, I'm a yacker, man. You made me laugh because you were talking about all the coaches I'm friends with around the country. Like, my athletes don't like that, because oftentimes at meets they can't find me because I'm off. I'm walking around constantly. I get my steps in talking to people. But
I've seen
yeah,
that.
that's really what I found is like the most where I soak in information best is just like having a conversation with coaches. Like, I've been to a lot of clinics, and they're good. And some are better than others, but I've been to coaching clinics and, national team coaches seminars at the training center. And they're all good. But those speakers are picking the content, and when you're in a conversation with somebody, it's 50-50. You get to pick that content. So like, I just think having a circle of coaches that, you talk to on a regular basis, and see what they're doing, what's working for them, what's not. And I've been super lucky in some of the relationships that I've had with other coaches around the country, and I try to continue to, build more, just to build my knowledge base. But yeah, man, I think it's important. I think it's important to continue to learn, for sure.
Yeah.
Otherwise you're just standing still. So,
well, let's talk about some of your kids. So you have some phenomenal people and athletes on your team, and you can highlight anything you want to. I'll start just specifically talking about Bailey Hartman, because you're going to World Juniors with her in Israel, and so people can see athletes, and you have a good amount of them at that caliber, and think, oh, that person's wicked talented. But when you start seeing people be successful over and over and over again, it's no mistake. And so I'm wondering, like, just with Bailey and with anyone on your team that you want to mention, like, what is it that separates someone who makes the world top 100 or makes World Juniors or represents Team USA? What is it that someone like Bailey does on a daily basis that makes her so dominant in her performances?
Um, well, I mean, to compete at, you know, at a world junior team level or a national team level or an Olympic level, like there's no doubt you have to have talent for sure. Um, I think if you want to swim at a Division I school, there's a lot of options, particularly for female athletes. I think at that level, and I'll get back to Bailey, but at that level, like, hey, you want to swim for a college team, like whether it's, D1, D2, D3, whatever, there's a lot of options. Like, I think everybody can do that because,
Agree.
um, like, swimming is a stupid thing to do with your body. Like, it's crazy. It's like nothing is natural. It's all skill based. You can have attributes, big hands, big feet, long arms. You're tall, you're strong, whatever that may be, whatever your physical attributes are, like that can help you. But ultimately, internally rotating your shoulder as you elevate it over your body and then you put as much force on it as you can 10,000 times a day is not what we're designed to do. And neither is a breaststroke kick or streamline, or a flutter or dolphin kick for that matter. Like our bodies weren't designed to do that. So I think it's a skill-based sport that if you start dedicating yourself to it early enough and you stick with it and continuously try to improve the mechanics of the sport and get in really good shape, you can go pretty fast. For somebody like Bailey, like at that level, you got to be really talented and you got to work really hard and you got to work on your technique all the time. I think, what separates Bailey, like for sure, her work ethic is excellent. She comes from a phenomenal family that is kind of like, pack your lunch and go to work style. Not a lot of fluff around it. And they expect her to represent herself well when she's outside of the house, and she does that. But I think with Bailey, like what I've seen from her training is she definitely does some things in training every once in a while where you're like, whoa, that was amazing. Like, holy crap, that's another level. But it's not that often. It's not every day. It's not every week. It may be once a month where you're like, whoa, that's amazing. But her worst days of training are just where she just does the set as prescribed, works on whatever technical thing we're working on as prescribed. And she never misses practice ever. Unless I make her, and like you add a bunch of those days up where your worst days are just doing what's prescribed, and you get really good. And it's like she's had some breakthrough performances, for sure, but it's just been a pretty steady upward tick for her. And I think that it's mostly that, and just like she really thrives in an environment where she's doing something. And I preach about this all the time, so I'll take some credit, but it's probably just her. um, but she thrives where she's doing something for her team, and I would imagine doing it for your country is a whole nother level of that. Like I think she's best when she's not thinking about herself. I think why she did so well at juniors, like that wasn't like juniors wasn't the focus for her. It was just so she could go swim somewhere, and not just have to do one-on-one training with me. But it was like, hey, we're in a points race here. Like the plan to keep you in shape was to do, all these events. She swum 18 times the meet. She's probably doing over 7,000 meters of warm-up, warm-down a day. Like that was her training that week, and she was going to swim hard to do that. But like she started swimming a heck of a lot harder after day one when she's like, oh, wow, we could actually maybe win this meet on the girls' side. And yeah, I think she thrives. And that's what's really special about her. I think when she has the opportunity to contribute to something bigger than herself, I think that's when she's like
That's cool.
at her best. And I really appreciate that about her. You know, I feel lucky to be able to coach somebody like that. It's really cool. It makes me look good. And then like, you know, that bleeds throughout the rest of the team. Like, it's nice when your most successful athlete is your hardest working athlete. That's another thing I recommend for people starting up a team. Find an athlete that will work really hard. That is your most successful athlete. That helps a lot.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of good athletes on our team. Like, one of the ones you know is Rhea, and like for her, similar to Bailey, like she doesn't miss and she works on her stuff all the time. She wasn't as put together at 12 years old when she joined our team as Bailey was. Rhea was a project, but I got to give a lot of credit to Ethan Hall for spotting that like right away. I don't know that you ever met Ethan. Did you meet him?
I know of Ethan, but I think I met him on one call, but that's
He's the man. He's one of the best coaches in the world, man. He's great. And I remember when she joined our team, I think she was 12. I think she was 12. And she was swimming rec, and like she'd take, like, I'm not kidding, like 18 strokes of breaststroke in a lap. Like, she didn't make it past the flags with her pull downs. Like, sorry, Rhea, but rough. And Ethan's like, that girl's going to be really good. And I was like, dude, I don't know. He's like, nope, you watch. She's going to be really good. Yeah, she's a cool customer, man. I had our the coach that was running the group at the time that she was in. I was like, hey, I'm going to come in. I'm going to show you what to do with this kid, right? Like, we got to get her stroke count down. We got to teach her how to do pull downs. So let's like do basically like a lesson with two coaches and an athlete to like figure out what it is that she needs to focus on in practice. And we came to the conclusion that she needed to do separated breaststroke. And like, that was just like, for people that don't know what separated breaststroke, because it's just like a pull, stop, and then you kick, stop, and then pull. Like, you don't ever move your arms and your legs at the same time. And I think we made her do that for 3 months. When she swam breaststroke at meets too. We made her do it all the time. And she did it. I might be over exaggerating. It might have been less than 3 months, but I'm sure it felt like 3 months to her. But yeah, it worked. And she was a trooper about it. And she, like, I think maybe more than anybody, her and Owen they're probably matched. They like to race. I think they enjoy the process of racing. She's certainly done that really well. And then when we're talking about our kids, I got to give a shout out to our guys, because everybody always wants to talk about our girls. Like, you swim for Crow Canyon. The girls are pretty good. So I was super. Honestly, like, I think 800 freestyle relay was on Tuesday at juniors. And I love Bailey. Don't get me wrong, but I was more excited for the guys getting 7th in the 800 freestyle relay than the girls, or than Bailey winning the 100 free. I was so pumped, because they've been it's been a while since we've had a group of guys like that, and they've like, this last year they've taken the training in our group to another level. That specifically the boys, Owen, Devin, Ethan Wang, even our younger guys, have created a new level of training and what they expect from each other in practice. And like, I'm super proud of those boys. And I think Owen Barry deserves a lot of credit for getting us there. So
that's legit.
Yeah, good kids. Good kids.
Across the board, I know obviously there's a bunch that you could shout out across the board for the sake of time, so we won't have going for 5 hours. We'll keep moving, but I love hearing that, and all the kids on your team are just phenomenal people too, and it was fun. I got the privilege of going to Hawaii with you guys for a training trip and got to know a bunch of them, and that was a ton of fun, and I got to see their mindset and their work ethic and some of the behind the scenes, and just the way that they work and interact and push each other, and the way that you interact and coach them, and the details. And I'm wondering if you could give, I'm just going to highlight something specific just so people can get a little insight into maybe your coaching philosophy or mind when you're working with strokes, like you mentioned with Rhea, working on separated breaststroke. And that was a really powerful drill, and how you guys recognized that was the most important thing for her. Wondering, like, what is it? If we'll just use a specific example with like Bailey's butterfly, like what's your favorite drill, or what do you feel like has been the most effective if someone's coaching a butterflyer? I know everybody is different, and so this is a really tough question to answer, but what do you feel like is the most important thing for 100, 200 flyer, drill wise, technique wise, that you see, hey, across the board, people are missing out on this, and this is something we do really well?
That's a tough question. Because I when I think, maybe it's like the critic in me, but when I think about any of my athletes like strokes, I think about what they need to do better, not what they do well, but they do things well. I think uh, for butterfly specifically, like I think it's really important that they, have good body position, have a good kick. That's number one. I think having stable hips where they don't have a whole bunch of up and down movement on the surface, and making sure they're setting a catch while they're downhill. So like chest is down, hips are up. They get a hold of the water and initiate pressing back on the water while their head's still down, not climbing with their, what I used to call it, don't climb into your catch. Like, don't lift your head up and drop your hips to set your catch. And apparently that was getting stale, because I think I said it too much and it was going in one ear and out the other. And then I was at a junior team camp, and Eric's like, "Hey, what's up with Bailey's breath?" I'm like, "I know, man. We're working on it." It's like, "Just tell her to breathe later." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then that's worked. So there's an example of just like, having some relationships with other coaches, like getting another eye. That's another thing that like that I that I've appreciated about my coaching career is I've always had another coach that like has been just as responsible for the success of our team as myself, and that, that was originally Chris Horner, who's at DA now, and then it was Ethan, and then I've had a couple years hiatus from having like a sidekick all the time. That, just having a different set of eyes on your athletes helps. And now like I've got Matt Page and Ben Hunt with me, that help a lot. So butterfly specifically, stable hips, constant kick, setting their catch while they're in what we call press position, head and chest down, hips up. And then I think like one of the things I always look for is, just as an overwater guide to what's going on underwater, is like, where are their elbows in relation to their body on their exit? So like, I know right away that either your body position's whack or your pole's whack if like when you exit, your elbows are behind your back, and I can like see a gap there, So like if, Bailey specifically, if she drops her hips as she's going through her pull pattern, her elbows are going to be behind her back when she exits. Or if she like collapses her elbows and her hands come in here on a particular pull, it doesn't happen all the time, but maybe when she gets fatigued, she'll tend to do this and then exit. So that part, like just stand deep while you come under your body. And then once your elbows are done, once they can't move back anymore, like it's time to get your hands moving out so that they're already moving forward by the time they exit the water, if you out sweep aggressively enough. So like general themes in fly is keep your hips stable, make sure you set your catch in your press position, and then all your efforts need to go into moving forward through your exits, forward through your entries.
I like the way you break that down too, kind of like a macro view and then a micro view, and then picking apart the different things that you can help improve. I think every coach has some sort of like hopefully some sort of technique philosophy that they're coaching their athletes. Maybe not everyone, but hopefully everyone. But I think how it's executed is interesting, and something I've noticed with a lot of the teams across the country that separates good from great is the standard that you have with those things. So you share, okay, these are the main points with butterfly. So what level of accountability do you hold your athletes to in their technique? Like, how often are you correcting them? What happens if they're not keeping their technique? And how accountable are they? Like, becoming aware of when they're not doing something and kind of having a culture where they're owning it too and helping each other.
One, I always say, like, hey, you got to take personal responsibility for your stroke technique, right? Like, you are the best coach you'll ever have. What's important is what I feel like my job is, especially preparing athletes for college. And you know, they get stroke advice in college, but it's probably going to be less than they get with their club teams, or at least with us. We hope that we're giving them what they need to not have to have constant feedback on their technique when they get to school and they can focus on going fast. But I think you know, we try to give them as many cues that we can, so that they can know whether or not they're doing something correctly or incorrectly without a coach having to watch. Having said that, I'm talking to people about their technique every time they're on the wall. Like, my goal every day is to give somebody something they're doing well. You know, if we got 25 kids in the practice, everybody gets something they're doing well. Everybody gets something they're going to work on. And then the kids that respond to that feedback the most get the most of my attention. You know, but I'm talking to somebody about their technique every time on the wall. And you got to pick your spots. Like, or at least I feel like I have to, because we work really hard. You know, like, it's hard work in the sport, and I can only speak for my athletes, but I think they work really hard. Our goal is to be the hardest working team in the country, you know, and I sometimes have to hold back, I think, and it depends on the athlete, it depends on the situation, but you know, when you're working your tail off, you know, and you're close to death, sometimes it's not fun to hear, like, hey, you screwed up that entry by 3/4 of an inch. Like, you know what I mean? So I don't always pick on them about their technique, but we do have a high level of accountability with our athletes. And I just think that what I view as my main role when it comes to technical stuff is to try to give those athletes as much information, or the information that they need to be able to tell whether or not they're doing things correctly or incorrectly on their own, as much as I can, so that they can take it on themselves and be self-sufficient, and be able to measure their efficiency against the clock. So
I love that. I love that, because you're giving them every tool and resource they can have to be successful, and they obviously have to take it upon themselves to implement it and hold themselves to that same level of accountability if they want to be great. And then if you see that they're doing that, you're going to give them even more.
They have to. You have to, like, for that, any athletes listening to this, like, you have to be self-motivated when it comes to your technique. Like, you have to care more about your technique than anybody else in the world. Like, not if your coach cares more than you do, like, it's not going to work. They're not going to stand over you every day, the whole day, and you don't want them to. That's no friggin' fun. Like, you have to be thinking about it when no one else is. You have to be interested in improving every stroke, every time you take it. And nobody's perfect. You're not going to do that all the time, but you can do it more often, guaranteed. So
that's good.
That would be my advice for swimmers. Like, take responsibility for your technique, ask questions if you don't understand something, and figure out ways to measure objectively whether or not it's working. Like taking 28 strokes in a 50-meter freestyle is great, but not if you go a 38.
Mm-hmm.
Taking 30 strokes in 29 seconds is a lot better than taking 28 in 38. So like things like that, like figure out ways to measure whether or not your technique is working for you, and ask questions about things you don't understand, and then work on it all the time. You're not going to do it in a race until you do it in the main set in practice, and you're not going to do it in the main set in practice until you're doing it in warm up and warm down every day. So
these are great sound bites. Athletes listening to this right now. If you take these principles and
athletes are not going to want to hear it. They'll tune out for this part.
They got it locked in. No, those are
I don't know about that, but they've heard it before. That's for sure.
Phenomenal pieces of advice, and you're talking about, this is kind of the last subject to wrap up here, but you're talking about objective, like measurables and things to measure progress. And so I'm going to embarrass you and the team for a minute, because your guys' progress is very easy to see, and the things that you've done are wild. Like, and honestly, things that you guys have done are things that people would say are impossible. So like, for example, you guys have a team of 160 total athletes, top to bottom, and you guys your ladies were 1 second away from winning summer junior nationals as a team, and we're leading the entire week, and we're back and forth with another great program, Carmel Swim Club in Indiana. But the interesting thing is they're about 3 to 4 times the size of Crow Canyon, and yet you are right there down to the very last relay it came down to, which was so fun to watch. I remember screaming at my live stream, cheering for you guys, and it was absolutely epic. But and an incredible relay from both sides. But I can't tell you how many times I've heard coaches say, hey, we're a small team. We'll never be like competing with the teams that have 500 or 700 or 1,000 or however big another team is. And something that I admire about you and all of your kids is that they're like, we don't care. We don't care what size we are. Like, we want to win. Like, we want to be great. And like, we're focused on being great people, but we want to be the best we can be in the water. So like, come on, put us up against the best of the best. And how do you build a culture like that? How do you take a small team like that to compete with people who are significantly larger than you on the biggest stage? What does that look like?
Well, first of all, thank you. But I probably our girls did phenomenal. I'm more proud of our combined team score that we were 4th. Like, I think I'm really proud of the fact that everybody contributed.
It's amazing.
And I think, like you said, we don't care. We don't care what size our team is, and you don't need a huge team to be successful at a junior national meet. We have good percentages when it comes to who qualifies for meets. That's what it comes down to. Like, it's like we have some elite athletes. We had 16 summer junior qualifiers, right? Or 17, something like that. Out of our, my group had 27 kids in it. Like, our goal was for everybody to make that meet. We came up a little short, but and then when what I preach to the athletes is like, yeah, we're a smaller team. That means everybody needs to be involved, whether or not you are in the pool or on the sidelines or at home. And I think every kid from our 9-year-old that just started swimming to our 18-year-olds that are graduated, like, they all contribute in some way to, our girls going 407 in the 400 medley relay. Somehow, some way they do. that's what I try to preach to them. But like when it comes down to just like the tactical level of scoring points at a meet like that, like you gotta have a couple fast kids. You gotta have a couple fast athletes, and you gotta score in relays. And there's only 4 people on a relay. There's not 500. So, yeah, I mean, we've never viewed that as an excuse. Like it's a badge of honor we have that that we are small but mighty, and we like to compete with the best. And whether we have 60 or 600 athletes on our team, like we're gonna do everything we can to be the best team in the country. That's what our goal is. Like we're not gonna pout over not being that. But I think just like you say, like you strive for perfection. You never reach it, right? It's good to shoot for the moon, and that's what we always try to do. Like every year, our goal is to win summer juniors. Every year. And we haven't done it yet. And I'm okay with that. Like, as long as, like, my thing when we go to those meets, what I preach to our athletes every time we go to those kind of competitions where you're doing team score thing, like, it's the most fun you're going to have in the sport, like, that's why college swimming is so much fun, because you do it at every meet. But that like, it's not about winning or losing the competition. It's about deciding that you're going to try to do something really hard together, and you're going to give it everything you have no matter what, and not being afraid of failure, because like most people stop short of failure, whatever it is. Most people are afraid of giving it everything they got, coming up short, and then being slapped in the face with that reality, like, oh, I need to get back to work. But if you're afraid of failure and you give up rather than fail, like, you never really figure out where you're at and what you need to do next. So that's the approach we take into those meets. I think that's why, or that's not why we're successful, because we have amazing athletes. And the attitude we take into those meets is just all about like, hey, what can you do for your team? Let's do that. Let's pick a really hard goal to go for and try to do it together. If we come up short, fine, we'll get back to work.
Yeah. I mean, that's inspiring.
Like, that's what you're going to do anyways. If you succeed, you reach your goal, the next step is get back to work. And if you come up short, you don't reach your goal, the next step is get back to work. So
either way, you're getting back to work.
You got nothing to lose. So
yeah, I love that. You learn and grow no matter what, whether you're winning or losing. And if you're winning,
we got a saying: it's you either win or you learn. You never lose.
Yep, I love it. So. And staying hungry, like you mentioned, when you do succeed, it's like, cool. Like, stay hungry, stay humble. Let's get back to work. What else can we do better? And
yeah, we're greedy Americans, man.
I love it. Well, Joe, thank you so much for the time, man. I know that this has been awesome for me. I know it will be inspiring to many who watch this, athletes, coaches, parents alike. It's a privilege to get to brush shoulders with you on a day-to-day basis. And thanks for all you're doing for the swim community and taking the time to come on our podcast.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for everything you do for our team. And I really appreciate you having me on here. It's good talking to you.
Thank you for listening to the SwimStrong Dryland Podcast. If you'd like to be a part of the SwimStrong Dryland family, you can reach out to us via email or social media. You can also follow SwimStrong Dryland on YouTube and TikTok for more educational content.